On behalf of PATH, Parent to Parent of Connecticut, my name is Livingstone Mukasa, and welcome to Understanding Social and Racial Injustice series and today's Dad's Roundtable discussion. Our panel consists of four fathers, all raising Black children. With us today are Chuck Smith, Fontaine Richardson, Corey Dillard, and Jama Muhammad. Gentlemen, welcome. It is a pleasure to be amongst you, and thank you for being here and lending your time to this really important discussion. Let me begin by saying that we are in perilous times. In recent months, amid a global pandemic, we've witnessed a national uprising against police brutality and systemic racism. And we're seeing a country divided on whether some people's rights and existence is as important as others. We've invited you here to share your thoughts and experiences as you guide your children through these extraordinary moments and envision the future your sons and daughters will inherit. Jama Muhammad will have the honor of taking our first question. Jama, the reality of being Black in America is that one day your child may not come back home. What keeps you sane knowing this cannot be ignored? How do you shield your children from your fear? And how do you deal with the fear that they voice and the fear that they don't voice?
This question specifically for me was very difficult for me to try to answer. My sons are 7 and 2 years old, and they're still in that stage where they still see the cops as good guys. And I don't want to be the one to ruin that for them. So for me, it's been difficult to find a space that makes sense to teach them about how to move in the world. But I think as they get older, I feel like the clock is ticking, and I have to eventually come to a point and just be upfront with them about that. And I guess I have some solace in knowing it's not right now, and that keeps me sane in some aspects. But a lot of times I'm just internalizing all of the fears I have for them.
Jama, that was very, very insightful. Thank you very much for your response, and we will now move to our next question. Look, we raise our children in a world that has a host of assumptions about who they are and what they're capable of. How best do you deal with that ever-present challenge? And what about your own upbringing prepared you for it? And how do you raise your children to be confident and careful about how they move through spaces and remain conscious of the world around them?
Well, I like this question because it is challenging, just like the other one was for my partner there. First of all, I grew up in the late part of the civil rights movement. So my parents were definitely conscious of giving me as many opportunities as possible, especially a lot of ones that they never had for themselves. So I grew up with a lot of confidence and a lot of exposure to opportunities that I think even some of my older siblings didn't have because they were born and raised in the 50s and 40s. So that was the first thing. And that left me in a place of moving in the world a little bit differently than even some of my peers who may not have felt that kind of confidence or had the experiences that I was exposed to. So that really made a difference in my life in the long run. So my children are biracial, so they have at least two cultural heritages to connect with. And I wanted to make sure that they didn't lose the richness of their Black experience. So we would go back and visit family. I involved them in NAACP youth experiences. We celebrated Kwanzaa. I also made sure they spent time around strong Black women and men so they can see what this picture looks like as they grow up and sort of figure out their own identity. That leads me to sort of the last part of I have to pay attention to when they begin to experience some of the challenges to make sure I find the right time to talk about it. I had one conversation with my youngest son about the possibilities of having racial slurs thrown against him in the school he was going to, and it hadn't happened to him yet. So he was kind of looking at me kind of funny, like, "What are you talking about, Dad?" And but at the same time, he's really big into social justice. So he gets very, very angry with the kinds of things that we see going on today, even back for the last few years. So I think that's the hard part as a parent, not to push it onto your children before they've had a chance to experience it, but not to wait too late for them to be caught off guard and something really bad happen in regard to police encounters and things like that.
Thank you very much, Chuck, for that really thoughtful response. There's a lot to unpack there, and we really appreciate it. This question is for Corey. Corey, there are times where toxic masculinity is too often celebrated or left unaccountable. And these are those times. What role do you play in raising your children to be more sensitized to the harmful effects of gender-based stereotypes and inequities? And with your daughters, how do you prepare them in navigating these times safely and assertively? How do you nurture their power, their agency?
Well, I teach my boys, they are big boys now, teenagers, you know, just because, you look a certain way or you're big or you work out doesn't give you a free card, to go out and bully other kids around that are smaller than you. I teach them, how to think for themselves. I let them know, because they are teenagers, that, there's going to be times, where people are going to look at you funny, and they're not going to like you, just because of the color of your skin. I kind of give them heads up about that stuff if they do encounter, or you will be called, certain names, but don't let that, affect you, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's just people are like that. There's racism in the world, and, whatever you do in this world, you have to kind of do it a little bit extra. You got to kind of stand out and work twice as hard. You may not get a job because of, the way you look or whatever. I let them know about things like that.
Thank you, Corey, for shedding light on this really important topic. We are really grateful and appreciate your response. And our final individual question goes to Fontaine Richardson. Fontaine, children are very conscious that the world has to be a better place. When they're troubled by the state of something, very often they're driven into doing something to express their agitation, their concern, or their aspirations. As a father, how important is it to encourage their active participation in community events and engagements? How important is showing them that they too have roles to play in leaving the world much better than they found it? And what examples from their participation can you share that have increased their sense of pride in community, in identity, and in activism?
As far as the community is concerned, community engagement, work, and activism, it's obviously important. That being said, one of the things I tried to instill in my kids is the idea that your primary community is your immediate household. And so really, my three kids ranging again from ages 12 to 27, I tried to, practice with them and challenge them over the years to really have a voice and perspective, take a position. The proverbial dinner table in my mind, presents an opportunity to have dialogue, to, discuss and debate. And if the kids take a position, I may challenge it and just, even my little one who's 12, and just want, to get some insight, the why behind the what, right, that she believes. And, if the response is, because that's not, good enough, I'm going to provoke you and say, maybe let's pause and come back. I want you to unpack your perspective. And so I think it's important to, again, that primary community, your household, to really help your kids to develop confidence, a perspective, a voice, and at times be comfortable with being contrarian. Don't, go with the flow. Carve out, your own, niche in the world, and be comfortable with defending, that plot of real estate, even if you have, many voices that are, set against you. If you have conviction, hold your ground, because there's definite value in doing so. So, I was born and raised in the Bronx, grew up in, public housing, and I was a teenager in the 80s, the crack epidemic. And I saw things as a youngster that, just quite honestly, adults shouldn't see and experience. And so, I could at that time have gone along with what was the status quo. But I actually had a vision, for myself that, transcended what I experienced in my neighborhood. And so, I've been a definite advocate with my kids, and, just sharing a perspective that, this is a launch pad, and my expectation is for you to take the mantle, and go further and do more than I have. And, again, it's challenging them to really have a voice and a position.
Fontaine, you have really gone beneath the surface on this really important issue. Thank you. It's been really insightful, particularly how you mentioned the household, the family being the primary community, and how that helps an individual learn how to engage with the secondary and external communities that they face. Very, very insightful indeed. Thank you. And finally, we are going to have one more group question. So we're going to go around, and I'd like each one of you to let us know what you love best about being a dad.
I'm going with the lame dad jokes for 100. My best opportunity. Now I have an excuse for saying silly things that embarrass my children even when they're adults.
Man, the macaroni cards, or the macaroni, any type of macaroni art. I'm in it for the macaroni art, actually. That's the only reason I even had the kids, is like, I'm just trying to watch cartoons forever and, have people make me macaroni art.
What I love most about being a father is having that experience, being that experience for your kids when they experience something or are going through something, and they're not quite sure what it is or how to express themselves. I can kind of be there for them and help them out.
For starters, I would say I really just take pleasure in the fact that I've been there. I was raised in a single parent household. My mother didn't grow up around my father at all. And so I definitely take pride in the fact that my kids have never visited me. I've been a part of their lives since day one.
And on that note, gentlemen, we now come to the end of this discussion. I couldn't thank you enough. And on behalf of PATH, Parent to Parent of Connecticut, we are very grateful for your time, and thank you for lending your thoughts to this really important discussion. All the best to you, gentlemen. And once again, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
To learn more about PATH, Parent to Parent Family Voices of Connecticut, go to our website, pathct.org, and follow us on all social media. Stay tuned to see what happens next in the series.